which live this Ignatian spirituality, but go inside in myself, and that is helping me also in my life of prayer. Now the French is coming into the middle. I can't speak English very well. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, thank you for sharing. Thank you for joining us. And yeah, we'll continue the conversation. All right, well, let me give an overview of the day here, the next 2 hours. Fifth and final session of our first online retreat will be with the core teams. The core team of here, some of who have been part of this retreat so far. Pat's joining us and he'll be teaching today. So the core team over the past few years has been meeting every month, and you know, we're constantly in touch and envisioning and bringing our visions and dreams and for Ignatian yoga to a reality. So it's been really wonderful working with this group. So couldn't ask for a better group to, oh yeah, I guess I'll just jump right in and share. It's my birthday and also Nicki's birthday. So great to celebrate with you all. So I see this is a little birthday party for us here. So today, what will look like in a moment, Carolyn will offer a opening meditation. Then the core team will be sharing some little summary and takeaways from this time. Then a few pieces of what Ignatian spirituality and yoga can offer us at this time. Some of the graces to stay with, and then some pieces that we want to put in our toolbox or toolkit from the Ignatian yoga tradition. So certainly a working one that we're constantly building. And then some visions and plans for the future for Ignatian yoga and for us. And then Pat will teach yoga. We'll have some time for small group sharing and reflection, and then come back. And then we're going to try to leave some time within the 2 hours for some time of evaluation, because your feedback is really important for us to continue to figure out if we're going to do another one of these, and if so, how we can make it to be most effective and helpful. Okay, Carolyn, I'll pass to you.
Thanks, Bobby. It's really nice to be back with all of you, and hi from Milwaukee. So if you're not in a comfortable seat or a comfortable position, I invite you to just find that right now, whatever that is for you. I see some comfortable chairs on the screen. And if eyes closed is comfortable, feel free to close your eyes, or maybe just bring a soft gaze down the bridge of your nose, maybe to your feet for extra grounding. And just allow yourself a few moments to breathe and let yourself feel supported by whatever it is you're sitting on. So maybe a chair, feeling your seat, feeling your spine relaxed on the back of the chair, noticing your feet on the floor. And as you become aware of your body being held, invite your shoulders to relax and drop down away from your ears. Maybe relaxing the jaw, letting the eyes soften. And taking a few moments of grounding breath. Noticing any areas that might feel tight or tense, and inviting space and openness, directing your breath to those areas perhaps. And we'll take a few breaths together. So inhale deeply, filling the belly, letting the breath flow down, and then exhale to the count of 4. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Again, inhale deeply into the belly, and exhale to the count of 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Inhale, take another deep breath in. And then exhale to the count of 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Inhale deeply. Exhale to the count of 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. And again, inhale deeply. Exhale to the count of 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Continuing to feel a sense of calm and groundedness. And I'll open up our retreat by sharing the Serenity Prayer. God, give me grace to accept with serenity the things that cannot be changed, courage to change the things which should be changed, and wisdom to distinguish the one from the other. Living one day at a time, enjoying one moment at a time, accepting hardship as a pathway to peace, taking, as Jesus did, the sinful world as it is, not as I would have it, trusting that you will make all things right if I surrender to your will, so that I may be reasonably happy in this life and supremely happy with you forever in the next. Amen.
And thank you, Carolyn. Okay, I'm going to begin just providing a little overview of what the past 4 weeks have been, and then we'll go into a little bit of reflection on that. We began the first session, which really right soon after canceling the New York retreat that was scheduled for March 20th to 22nd, and moving into this time of quarantine, of shelter in place that came in different time at different states, but for us for me in California, came pretty quickly, I think on the 18th of March. And so anyway, we threw together this retreat pretty quickly, and it's amazing how it's worked out, how it came together. So being in touch with a few of my Jesuit mentors, Frank Buckley, Frank Clooney, and Kevin O'Brien, and they were all willing to share. And I thought, oh, great, they'd be able to offer unique perspectives that could, I think, be helpful for the Ignatian yoga community. So that was weeks 2, 3, and 4. I guess going back to the first week, Alan and I, as we begin the Ignatian yoga retreats, we often will begin with the principle and foundation that Ignatius talks about. The goal of our life is to be in relationship with God, or in the original translation, to praise, reverence, and serve God. And so to use all these things of the world in so much as they help us, and avoid what doesn't. But most of all, trusting that God can work through even the most difficult of circumstances. So the principle and foundations, I think, continuing to come back to that throughout the spiritual exercises retreat, but throughout our life, right? To continue to ground ourselves in this worldview, this North Star. Frank Buckley, love Frank. He's drawing on so many different traditions, but yet so grounded in his primary faith tradition as a Catholic priest, but so versed in mindfulness, Buddhism, positive psychology, working with the unsheltered in Hollywood. And then Kevin O'Brien speaking about Ignatian discernment. So his book, The Ignatian Adventure, really helpful guide that's made this tradition really accessible to people. And then last week, having Frank Clooney, we had got on our more academic hat and jumped into a Harvard classroom and took us through a real gift. I mean, I've just, looking back on that, like, what a priceless thing to have the leading scholar in the world in this field doing theology of Ignatian yoga. It was a real gift to do that, and something we'll continue to go back to, that recording, that handout, and conversation with Frank. And then today we, in the past week, we got together and talked and said we want to wrap things up together as a core team to continue to deepen this experience and to look at where do we go from here, and to invite you all into that both with Ignatian yoga and also with your own lives, of how are we each individually being called to respond in these days, in the days ahead. So with that, I'll pass it to Alan.
Just to build on what Bobby was saying, part of the principle and foundation is surrounded around this question of freedom. So in the Yoga Sutras, we talk about it in terms of vairagya, freedom from, and abhyasa, freedom for, where are we going? And I was really struck by the way Frank Clooney asked this question: if I were truly free, what would I do with my life? That this sort of question can sort of be at the heart of where the spiritual exercises and the Yoga Sutras meet, that they meet at this sort of definite kind of decision that we make about the direction that our life is moving, what it is that we are giving ourselves to. I think that's, I forget the book, I think it's something like The Courage to Change. There's this idea that in terms of like a plane on autopilot, a plane doesn't just sort of stick on its course and then never leave it, that it's actually off course most of the time. And it's only on course for about 5 or 10% of the time. But the way autopilot works is that when you drift off, then you drift off to a bit, and then autopilot kicks in, and then it comes back on course, and then it drifts a little this way, and then it kicks back and it comes on course. And part of what I feel like these retreats are my spiritual director uses this image of bumper bowling, that God is with us, God is working with us, and these principles of discernment and practices really help us recalibrate, as Bobby said, kind of coming back to our North Star, coming back to our general orientation toward God. And this is something in terms of Ignatian spirituality. What we see about Ignatius is that he was radically Christ-centered. He was theocentric. And in the beginning of the spiritual exercises, the original title of the spiritual exercises is actually this: exercises that are intended to overcome oneself and to order one's life, so that we might reach a decision without some disordered affection. So this morning I was teaching a meditation course, and I was reading from an Augustinian monk, Martin Laird, who talks about spirituality as a kind of Copernican revolution, where we might realize that, sort of the earth is not the center of the solar system, the sun is. So the spiritual exercises are really recognizing Christ as the center of our spiritual solar system. So how it is that we can connect back to that. And so kind of going through this period of kind of a global crisis, I often go back and think about a certain period of time in Ignatius's own life of how to navigate difficulty. Like for me, St. Ignatius is a kind of pattern of, I just learned this term recently, post-traumatic growth, that there is this possibility of that going through crises that we grow. It doesn't mean that we don't suffer. And it's not universal, it doesn't happen to everybody, but it does happen, it's not uncommon. So what are some tips that we can gain from just looking at the life of St. Ignatius as a kind of model, role model, guide, archetype of how to go through this process with a bit of grace, so that we might actually, there's some veterans that have this phrase around post-traumatic growth. They say, a terrible thing is a terrible thing to waste. It's like a mind is a terrible thing to waste. A terrible thing is a terrible thing to waste. So how is it that journeying through this process of the pandemic with God as our companion, there is this possibility of growth, of transformation? And I think number one is St. Ignatius is hit by a cannonball there's a rupture of what is normal in his life. And just sort of looking at what did not work for him is these stories about how he tried to have leg surgery without anesthetic to go back to the old ways, to try to get back to quote normal. But, you know, he sort of realized very quickly that there was no going back. So there was a willingness to sort of let go of this old part of his life that had been changed. And that image of him going to Montserrat and setting down his sword before Our Lady as a way of kind of dedicating himself, shedding an old identity and being willing to go into a new identity, I think maybe is an important thing for us as fellow pilgrims to consider. You know, what are those parts of ourselves that, you know, having gone through this, maybe we have a little bit of perspective, and we have some perspective of what we might be willing to let go of. The next thing as we look at Ignatius is that he immersed himself in Scripture. He immersed himself in the lives of the saints, and he allowed his heart to be touched. So I think there's a difference kind of between reading in a kind of consuming way, like, which I tend to do. I try to take in as much information as possible, but then more of a lectio, where you read slowly and you let things really touch the heart, allow things to impact you. So that's one thing that we can sort of pick up from Ignatius's own life. The other thing is prayer, sort of moving into the Manresa period of his life, a deep retreat, is that he prayed for, I think, something like 5 or 8 hours a day. But also, if we look at what didn't work for Ignatius during that period of time, is a couple things. One is he did go to extremes. He didn't take care of his body. He fasted too much. And so I think it's important that as we move through this, to be extraordinarily gentle with ourselves, because we're all in a crisis. We're all in the midst of a traumatic kind of experience. So being extraordinarily gentle with ourselves, but also maybe being firm against desolation, firm against hopelessness. One thing that Ignatius also learned was that while he was doing that kind of extreme practice, is that it was performance-based. He didn't really get that God loved him as he was, and he was trying to earn it through being special. You know, of his own accord, he sort of wanted to be like St. Francis and outdo St. Francis, which always cracks me up. But one of the things that we can sort of think about is that he realized that God didn't want him to be Francis. God wanted him to be Ignatius. And Thomas Merton had this line that, for me, to be a saint is to be myself. So how is it that we might allow ourselves to be loved as we are, but also to recognize that God wants to take us someplace that maybe we haven't been yet? Last thing I want to mention is one of my spiritual directors, when I was going through my training, turned me on to this book. It's called Sleeping with Bread. It's written by a Jesuit, and I think his brother, and then his brother's wife. And it looks like a children's book, and it kind of is. But it's actually a profound book on the Examen. And the title is so powerful to me because it comes from during World War II, there were orphans that these children had lost everything. They had lost their parents, and they were staying in these orphanages. And because they had lost so much, they weren't able to sleep because they were afraid that they would wake up and they would have nothing. And someone had this brilliant idea that if you gave each child a piece of bread to sleep with, the child would know that they would wake up the next morning and they would have something to sustain them. And this is kind of the premise of the Examen is, and kind of in a certain sense, the premise of our retreat today is gathering the graces, gathering those things that we are grateful for, that keep our soul alive, that keep us sustained, that keep us nourished. And that kind of practice of savoring and lingering really can't be overstated in terms of its power to keep us going and to keep us to keep our souls vibrant and alive. Carolyn, did you want to move on to maybe some gifts that the yoga tradition might offer us?
Yeah, thanks, Alan. That was lovely. And that book is very intriguing, and I'm glad that you shared that. I'm going to share a little bit about what yoga has to offer us in this time, and I think there's already a lot of connections we can make to, what Bobby and Alan had already talked about. We know that practicing yoga has, scientifically proven benefits for the mind and body that can really strengthen us in normal times, but certainly in times of heightened stress. So flexibility, balance, improved sleep, adaptability, helping with back pain, and helping to engage our parasympathetic nervous system, which is our rest and digest nervous system, as opposed to the sympathetic nervous system, which is the fight or flight, which many of us might be feeling in a heightened way during these times. And so there's a lot of tools that have been proven to, help people in times of high stress, chronic stress that we're living through in this Western culture. So we know that there's already a lot of benefits that can really come into play, and that we can take these tools from our toolbox and apply them in certain situations. But I wanted to focus on 3 areas that I think are really important at this particular time that yoga has to offer us. And I guess I would start by saying, the foundational definition of yoga, which is to yoke or unite. I think that is such a powerful thing to think about right now in this time, because we're really seeing the dissolution of a lot of separateness or separation, whether we invite that dissolution or it's forced upon us. And we're also given this opportunity to have a little bit more time. And I don't want to say that that is necessarily a gift for everybody right now, but it is something that we have been given. And what we do with it could make all the difference. So to Alan's point about, connecting to that center, I think yoga is a way to yoke us to that center, because that is intrinsic to the definition. And so how do we find the opportunity in this, what may seem like a desolate time, to actually find some consolation? So the first thing I think yoga has to offer right now is the gift of awareness. The awareness of yourself, and hopefully leading to the acceptance of love, and of acceptance and love of yourself, to help you understand, the stories that are coming up through your lived experience in these times, to understand, your reactions that you might have by reading a news headline or seeing something on a walk that just bring up a reaction, and instead of letting that reaction lead you, to have some space to process that thought, that reaction, to lead you to maybe a more solid response that is coming from a place of consolation. And it helps to recognize that we have a mind and we have a body, but we are not our bodies and we are not our minds. And so I think often we let our reactions lead us, and in that sense give our control over to the mind or body reactions, when really we can take time to think through why things are coming up the way they are. I think also that the body is an incredible reference point for these things. So the body has a lot of things to tell us that our minds might overlook or shove down. And so through practice of asana, through practice of pranayama and meditation, what things are arising when you start to allow yourself to find that quiet space? I think right now also resilience is an incredible gift that yoga can offer us in this time. Coming back to that way that yoga allows us to find that rest and digest pattern over the fight or flight pattern. So how do we continue to strengthen those tools that turn on that relaxation response, so that we can enter with a more clear mind, clear heart, and not try to force things to where we want them to be, but to accept things the way they are and know that what this is right now is temporary, and how we can move through that, because the only way to the next place is to go through the current place and not around it. And so how can we embrace that non-judgment and embrace that response that brings us closer to wholeness? And I think the breath is obviously the essential part of all of this practice, because in our day-to-day life, we might not be able to just like drop down in a child's pose in the grocery store or take seated meditation when we're chasing our kid around, but you can engage the breath in seconds, minutes, to help you come back to that place of resiliency, to give you strength to move forward. And I think all of these lead to what I think is, again, the most important thing yoga has to offer us, which is also, I think, the most important thing that most spiritual and faith traditions have to offer us, which is reminding us that we are connected to one another. You know, to quote from Father Greg Boyle, that we belong to one another, that the separateness that our lives before COVID allowed us to kind of move quickly and think or not think about how we are connected. Now we have the space and the time, hopefully, to see that this pandemic is not affecting all of us the same way, but it is all affecting us. And I think, how can we live this practice, whether it's Ignatian spirituality, whether it's yoga, how can we live this beyond maybe the mat or the cushion that we devote ourselves to on the daily? So I think something that has been really striking for me, and as an example of how we acknowledge this connection, is a quote from one doctor from the National Institutes of Health who has said, you know, why we wear the masks. I wear the mask for you, you wear the mask for me. And that acknowledgement that we are here to take care of each other and to bring ourselves to a state of wholeness, and that we can't do that separately, that it's going to take all of us to find that connection and to move towards a new reality. And healing and wholeness, I think, is a really powerful thing that yoga has to offer. And so how can we live these things off the mat? How can we make this practice just part of who we are? Instead of doing yoga, how can we be yoga? Instead of, I don't know, insert your own examples of things that you do for yourself that you can do for others, for your neighbors. And I think another good example from my personal experience is that I live in a neighborhood where a lot of people like to put political signs out, and that's great. And there are certainly people who have political signs in their yard that don't reflect my political beliefs. And normally I think that would be a barrier to engagement, but in these times where I'm thinking about my elderly neighbors who don't have children nearby, it's very easy to look past those political signs and see the person and see that we all have needs that need to be met at this time, and it's going to take all of us to meet those needs. So yoga is certainly more than just the asanas. I think the asanas are a really accessible way to go deeper into this tradition. But there's also so much to be gained from the asana practice itself in terms of awareness and resilience, and seeing how the mind and body and being are really connected. So just some things that I've been thinking about. And now I'll ask Pat to take us to the next question.
Thank you, Carolyn. So it's something that I'll be talking a little bit about today is just some of the graces of this time that we're invited to linger with and to savor, both in terms of this retreat opportunity over the past 5 weeks, but also just in terms of this experience of the pandemic. And for me, as I've been moving through this experience in both ways that I'm proud of and perhaps moments that I'm not proud of, just based off of how I've been touched or my mood or a particular day. I think what really stands out to me, both through conversations with friends and some personal prayer and journaling the two words that really stand out to me are community and connection. I think certainly in terms of the retreat, the opportunity to bring together our Ignatian yoga community in such a more vast and broad way than we've ever been able to, for me, has been such this beautiful blessing and silver lining in a really awful moment in our history as a world and as a human and global community. You know, with being such a small team and an organization that's looking at how we can grow in sustainable ways, we're limited in what we can offer because of travel and resources. And this has been such a blessing to be able to connect with people across the globe and to bring people together for community and for connection at a time when many of us are craving that and needing that as a way to sustain ourselves through this experience. And also just in terms of being able to bring together voices of people who are so deeply rooted in these traditions, to be able to share out their insights from their own lived experience, from their own prayer and practice, has been such a gift that wouldn't have been able to, or wouldn't have been thought to be offered previously. I think for myself, the ideas of community and connection has come both from that sense of self, both through the yoga practice and through Ignatian spirituality, of connection with a deeper sense of my own being and the presence of the divine within. I've been able to practice yoga in a more dedicated way than I have previous to this. And part of that is I needed a routine in my day. And so being able to wake up and carve out some space, whether it's 10 minutes or an hour, and what I may have available, both time-wise and emotionally and physically, has been such a gift for myself, and one that I know many other people have been finding as well. And then I also think the sense of community and connection with others. Zoom has become such a used platform over the past month or so, being able to connect with friends and family that I wouldn't normally connect with in such an ongoing way. And I also know that that's such a gift and a privilege with having access to technology and all of that, something that I know that isn't present for everyone at this time. I think that idea of community and connection also comes with what Carolyn was talking about, of the engagement of awareness, both of self, but also just of reality. And for me, that's really been what this experience has raised for me, is a forced clarity and insight into the realities of our world in ways that perhaps I lose sight of in my own day-to-day, and perhaps sometimes that I try and blind myself or be in denial to be able to maintain a sense of ease within my day. And what a privilege that is to be able to do. I think this experience of the pandemic has, especially within our own country, really brought to the surface what we've been trying to hide in silence for so long. It's just how, how certain communities are disproportionately affected by these moments, particularly Black and Brown communities and folks without access to resources that we all deserve. And for me, that comes from that awareness of self and other through the yoga practice, but also the awareness of self and other that comes through Ignatian spirituality, through the practice of the examen, through the looking out for those who are marginalized within our society and our world. And for me, that's been, though certainly difficult and a challenge, a real gift and a blessing, and it develops a sense of hope for me that will help inform how we recognize our connection, recognize our union as a human community and as a global community as we navigate our way through and beyond this moment in our time. So those are some of the things that I've been thinking about, and a lot of that comes from the teachings and the experiences that have been shared through this retreat experience. And imagine that each of you have recognized different insights or realizations that have kind of bubbled up to the surface during this time of difficulty, of perhaps clarity, and hopefully of community and connection.
Awesome. Thank you, Pat. Before we move into the yoga practice, a couple final things of just to invite each of the core team here to share a grace. So just to begin that, I'm also right now in this writing workshop for spiritual leaders who are committed to building a new economy or being in kind of a sort of incubating new ideas. And I was writing about Ignatian yoga in the group, and one of some feedback I got when I wrote about Ignatian yoga was somebody wrote, "I sense a deep power emerging." And that was a real grace that I think Ignatian yoga, I sense a deep power emerging in the world right now, in our spiritual communities, and specifically in Ignatian yoga. And just spoke of like on Sundays, so session 5, what we're in sort of usually we do 5 sessions on a weekend retreat. Just the awe of like coming together, kind of envisioning something, dreaming something, collaborating with others, and then like, and making space for a community to unfold that's embodied, that's drawing on these traditions. And so this deep power emerging is something that has been a real grace, and I want to just stay with. And I think also that sense of a deep power emerging, that I feel coming as with ordination approaching too, that I hope that being an ordained minister in the church will just further amplify the way that I can hopefully promote and walk with and be a conduit of God's healing, of God's transformation, of God's flourishing in the world. So yeah, been such a blessing to be able to collaborate with the many other Ignatian yoga teachers and with all of you. I'll pass to others, and I want to see if Nicki, did you want to jump in here?
Sure. So I think that I've just been really grateful to hear the 4 of you sort of offer your reflections on this time. And I think that one of the graces for me, both, of this retreat was Father O'Brien talking about the body being the bridge between our interior and our exterior lives. And I think that, Carolyn, you sort of named that, but I think that especially in times of desolation, my tendency is to spiritualize it or intellectualize it, and that staying grounded in the body through a yoga practice is really an important thing for me in and remaining grounded in the reality of the dailiness of my life. And I also think that the practice on the mat sort of can reveal to me the inner dialogue that I'm not always aware of, right? Like that when I'm in a pose, the self-doubt or the talk of like, I can't hold it any longer, or the patterns that show up in my self-talk on the mat are so often also the same kinds of patterns that show up in my life. And so sitting in the physicalness of an embodied practice really allows me to bring the experiential and the existential into conversation in a really meaningful way. So I've been really grateful for this, Ignatian yoga practice, especially in this time. And I think that one of the graces from the pandemic is is hearing, that Carolyn, like you talked about the man, like health officials and media outlets talking about how we're all in this together, right? And I think that that's something that we have been talking about in spiritual circles, that like we are vastly like how important it is to recognize this like web of interbeing in which we exist, but to hear that become part of the the wider dialogue and mainstream dialogue has been a real grace for me, and having this like really biological, physical manifestation of this more esoteric or existential reality that like that that's been a really profound grace for me. And I think that one more thing that we sort of wanted to touch on is like, what is Ignatian yoga? Like, one of the most common questions we get asked as a team is like, okay, so we were on this retreat and now what? And so I think I want to sort of open it up to all of us to maybe share, what is this Ignatian yoga toolkit that we can invite people to use as this time together sort of draws to a close. And one of the practices that has sort of like evolved in my life as I've tried to bring these together is what I think Bobby named it the first time, but like an examen asana class, right? Like that, bringing these two daily practices from these two traditions, the examen and asana, together. And so what that looks like in my life is that I'll do an asana practice. Sometimes, a lot of times it's, on YouTube, Yoga with Adrian or something like that. And then as we lead into Shavasana, I hit pause, or I end the video early and go into my own extended Shavasana and examen. That these, in the 8 limbs of yoga, the physical poses are, meant to help us engage more deeply in meditation. And so really using them as they're intended to like deepen my then experience of quiet and meditation. So in terms of a toolkit moving forward, I know that Pat, Carolyn, and Alan, and Bobby, like you all have your own practices and a lot of wisdom to share. So if we could take just maybe a few more moments to leave people with a toolkit, I think that might be really great.
I think the one thing that I would, that I've been sort of reconnecting with and maybe would invite others to experiment with, and Carolyn did a really beautiful expression of this at the beginning, was pranayama. This week I've been looking at this. It looks like the Bhagavad Gita. Someone gave me this. It's a really thick commentary, but the Swami who wrote the commentary just talked about the relationship between our breath and thoughts. And in my own life, what I've noticed is that my emotional life, sort of pre-pranayama, is like this, but through a sustained practice with alternate nostril breathing or equal part breathing, just sort of my inner emotional language gets a little bit more balanced out. And I've just been using it as a practical, I think Father Cyprian talks it about as, in spiritual life, we've got like telos and scopos, like your aim, your ultimate aim, and then the practices that you use to support you moving in that direction. And the pranayama, I think, has really been helpful for me as a practice to realign with my ultimate aim.
For me, what I've been finding helpful in terms of kind of Ignatian yoga and this practice throughout this time is, for me, it's been about an awareness of body and of mind. And so I tend to practice in the morning. And so when I wake up, asking myself, like, what am I feeling in my body? And a lot of that times it's a mixture of a physical and physiological and emotional reaction. So sometimes it's just like I wake up in the morning and my hips are tight, and just feeling like that's the part of my body that I'm needing to give attention and care to. And so I look to have a physical practice that allows me to kind of open up, stretch, spend some time in my hips. And then after that, spending some time, whether it's right after or later in the day, doing some journaling. And my journaling is oftentimes a form of the exam. And so that opportunity to kind of move through my day and identify the graces, the challenges, where I felt more drawn to God, where I felt distance from God, or perhaps where I didn't create a sense of awareness around the presence of God. And so those two practices for me have been helpful to stay grounded and just to acknowledge and be aware around what's happening in my day-to-day because my day-to-day has looked so different at each moment throughout this time, because of the uncertainty, because of the anxiety that I'm carrying in the midst of all of this, and thinking about my own reality and the reality of others, and how the lack of control that I feel within this. And so how can I build a sense of an awareness and a sense of acceptance around that, and pay attention to how my body's responding to those moments, as Carolyn was talking about in terms of the yoga practice. So those two things, those two practices have been helpful for me, and taking those both on and off the mat, even as I'm walking my dog. As Carolyn was speaking to this too, as I'm walking my dog, and especially at this time of spring, here in Baltimore where I am, things are just kind of exploding. And what a gift that is, that I'm able to see that in a way that I wouldn't if I was still going to work and going into the office. And I take that as a blessing and an opportunity to witness creation and growth, and maintain a sense of hope of that kind of post-traumatic growth that Alan was talking to. I'm really grateful for that. That idea. That's not one that I've heard of before, but one that I already see kind of coming to fruition in my own life, and that I'm hopeful will come to fruition for our society and our world.
I think all of the previous tools and practices mentioned are things that I'm also considering. Journaling has factored in a lot because as a mother of a young child, my day has not gotten any less busy or full, but I can carry around this little journal with me and jot down things. Previously, I would practice yoga, do meditation, but maybe not take account of the things that I was feeling, and so I'd like move on and then maybe like revisit this circle. And so the journal has been a really nice way for me to kind of track how I've been handling and managing and thinking through some of the challenges that have arisen, especially in the past month, but also as a reassurance that, okay, we've seen some of this before, and here's how you've responded. Where can we go from here? So journaling has been a really helpful thing. But another aspect that has had to shift virtually, and this is just connection with friends and groups that I'm a part of. And so I think the creative relationships connection that has emerged from this has been really joyful. So I have weekly standing meetings with different groups of friends and spiritual groups that I'm a part of. And I feel like we've in some ways been able to maybe go a little deeper than perhaps we have in person. Or the questions that we ask have a different meaning because of the time that we're in. So, for example, the how are you question, the responses to that question are different at this time, because people are thinking about their, immediate health, or how they've been personally impacted by COVID, or maybe some people have been laid off and how that's really impacting their day-to-day life. And so I think that's been a real gift to be able to go past the sometimes necessary superficial conversations that we have to really get to the heart of what's happening for all of us right now and what's emerging. And so I think this platform that we've been offering is also a really beautiful example of how to connect with people all over the world. So Burkina Faso, I think, might be the farthest. But I think that's a really beautiful thing, that no matter where we are in life and where we are physically around the world, that there's a similar pull to thinking through these things and being with one another as we journey through the unknown and into the unknown. So that's been a very important practice that I hope continues, that these established circles that I'm a part of will only grow stronger when we're able to move it back into real life. Well, not real life, but in-person life. So you can't really move forward without having somebody accompany you. And I think having a community of support and challenge in a positive way is a really important aspect to growth, spiritually, physically, mentally, emotionally, all of the things. So it's been a really big gift for me to be a part of this retreat with all of you. So thanks for showing up.
Great. And just a couple other things to throw into the toolkit here that we'll write some of this down and share it in an email that will be continuing to grow. But one nice thing doing a retreat at home here is I can just I've been pulling books off the bookshelf. One of those is Alan, so glad you mentioned this is the Spanish version, Durmiendo con un pan. So a bunch of his books, Dennis and Matlin's books are in Spanish as well. So we could put some links to those as well. Another book I just pulled off, The Spiritual Exercises. So annotation 22 is sometimes talked about as like the Ignatian plus sign, but it's basically assuming the best in the other. So it's particularly pertains to the between a spiritual director and a directee, but I think can be applied in all aspects of life. Are we assuming the best in the other, right? Are we being, so I think this time more than ever, are we being patient with the other? If we aren't understanding, are we jumping right to judgment, to criticism, to the worst case scenario, or trying to like follow up and ask and see that, you know, try to find the good, find the grace, find where God could be at in this. So hard to practice at times, right? Especially when we're kind of in that fight or flight time. So where the breath comes in our different practices and within families, you know, just want to a shout out to my mom, I think is on the call, has been on the call. Love you, Mom. Thank you for giving birth to me 35 years ago. But just in family dynamics, challenging, you know, of like, and it's the children, it's my brother and I who are often like, you know, concerned with, or, you know, calling out my mom, how the roles have changed from 15, 20 years ago, that no, you can't go out. So, but are we giving each other, are we assuming the best? Are we treating each other with love and care? You know, it's something that each day we need, and we're going to have our moments where we cross the line or we're impatient, but can we keep coming back to that and keep kind of trusting that God is at work in everybody here, but God works with people in different ways. So this box could continue to grow. We are about 15 minutes beyond the sharing, so we expected to, but I think some really good stuff shared in this past hour. So now we're going to move into a practice. Before we move in, I also want to invite just one other voice in here. Carol Gibney taught last week, one of the Ignatian yoga teachers, and just want to invite Carol to offer any grace or takeaway that she's experienced. Carol, are you up for putting her on the spot here?
I actually had my computer fixed. I was having problems last week. This has been a grace, this being together with all of you. I've heard many things that resonated. The spiritual communities that I have been a part of have deepened our relationship with each other. I have a group of women that every morning by 7:30 in the morning, I have 3 things that we're grateful for shared with each other. So in addition to what I'm grateful for, I'm like, oh yeah, that's great. And the women that I were trained in when I became a certified yoga teacher, we're doing a 30-day challenge together. So the people that I have been in sharing the spiritual exercises, the 19th annotation, we're meeting, we transferred our face-to-face meetings. We're meeting FaceTime and telephone. And so God is present in all of this. And my sweet husband, I'm married for over 35 years to the great love of my life, my spiritual community, and my 15-year-old dog, Gracie. Everything is, you know, the preciousness of the gift of life, the preciousness of relationship, the preciousness of, I said last week, when I go outside, I'm just hugged by that feminine energy of Mother Earth and awareness of all. I was, as a spiritual director for many years, I consistently said it's about awareness and movement, and moving deeper in my understanding of who and what God is, and moving deeper in my, you know, the good orderly direction, Christocentric, as Alan said so beautifully, that's the North Star. That's we're all graces. And so it's grace, joy as grace, grace as joy. So thank you.
All right, so feel free to take a moment to create your space if it's moving to a different space in your home, or just rolling out your mat. Just begin to find yourself there. We'll get started in just a moment. So just begin to find yourself in a comfortable position, seated on the floor in whatever way that may be. And as you find yourself in a comfortable seat, just begin to ground down into your sit bones. Bringing your hands to the tops of your thighs. And just allow your gaze to come into focus, either eyes closed or down in front of you. Allow your shoulders to begin to drop, the crown of your head reaching up towards the ceiling above you. So this dual action, rooting down into your sit bones as the crown of your head is reaching up. Begin to connect to your natural breath, the normal inhale and exhale from the body. And as you build a deeper connection, begin to bring your right hand to your belly and your left hand to your heart. Begin to lengthen your inhale and your exhale, practicing the Durga breath, Durga pranayama. So inhaling into your belly, your ribs, and your chest, and exhaling from your chest, your ribs, and your belly. So as you inhale, your belly expands, your ribs separate, and your chest rise. And as you exhale, your chest will drop, the ribs will knit into each other, and your belly pulls back to the spine. So inhaling into the three parts for 3, 2, 1. And exhaling for 3, 2, 1. Another inhale for 3, 2, 1. And exhaling from the chest, the ribs, and the spine. Begin to bring your hands back down to your knees or to your thighs. And we'll begin to bring some movement into the body, starting first with the cervical spine. So your chin comes down towards your chest, shoulders stay loose and dropped. On your inhale, your right ear moves towards your right shoulder, making circular motions with your neck as your head reaches back. And as you exhale, your left ear comes towards your left shoulder, and then chin towards chest. Keep moving in this direction, taking a deep inhale, right ear towards right shoulder, head reaching back. And exhale, left ear towards left shoulder, chin towards chest. 2 more times in this direction, inhaling back and to the right. Exhaling forward to the left. Another time, deep inhale here, rolling off to the right, head reaching back, shoulders remain dropped. And exhale, left ear towards left shoulder and chin towards chest. Moving in the opposite direction, left ear towards left shoulder on the inhale, head reaching back. Exhale, right ear towards right shoulder, chin towards chest. Inhaling back into the left. Exhaling forward and to the right. 2 more times at your own pace, following your inhale and your exhale. Your last time with a deep inhale, And a full exhale. Chin towards chest. When your chin meets your chest, you can inhale the crown of your head up. Chin comes parallel to the mat. Moving into our shoulders. Inhale, shoulders come forward and rise to your ears. Exhale, shoulder blades together on the back side of your body as shoulders drop. Inhale, shoulders rounding forward and up. Exhale, shoulder blades coming together as your shoulders drop. 2 more times. Inhale, forward and up with your shoulders. Exhale, back and down. 1 more time this direction. See if you can really exaggerate the movement. Inhale, shoulders rising. Exhale, shoulders dropping. Opposite direction. Inhale, shoulder blades come together. Your chest pulls through as your shoulders rise. Exhale, rounding of the upper back as your shoulders come forward and down. Inhale, shoulder blades coming together, expanding across the front of your chest as your shoulders rise to meet your ears. And exhale, shoulders forward and down. 2 more times. Inhaling back and up. Exhale, forward and down. Last time, deep inhale. Chest broadens, shoulders rise. Exhale, upper back rounds, shoulders drop. Bringing the movement into the core area of your body and feeling some expansion across the side obliques. Inhale, right hand comes down to the mat. Exhale, reaches up and over, feeling a long stretch. Really root down into that right hand. Reach with those left fingertips. Gaze looks out underneath the lifted arm. Really root down into that left hip. Make sure it's not rising off of your mat or your block or whatever you may be sitting on. Take a deep inhale here. See if you can really open your chest up to the ceiling as you continue to reach with your left fingertips. And as you exhale, keep your lower core engaged, pulling your navel back towards the spine. Taking 1 more inhale here. And a full exhale. Inhale, reach up and over to the opposite side. Left hand comes down to the mat. Right hand reaches up and over, feeling a long stretch on the right side of the body. Really use that left hand pushing down into the mat and the floor to help lift your chest, open it up to the ceiling above, and reach with those right fingertips, keeping that right hip rooted to the block or to the mat. Taking a deep inhale, see if you can get that 3-part breath again, so expanding into your belly, into the ribs and up into the chest. And as you exhale, root further into your sit bones, pulling your belly back towards your spine. Another inhale here. Exhale. Let's bring some movement. So inhale, reaching up and over. As your right hand plants down, exhale, reach long with your left fingertips. Inhale, reaching up and over. Left hand reaches down to the floor as right fingertips reach, exhaling here. Inhale, moving over to the right, reaching long with the left on the exhale. Inhale, opposite side, left hand plants down as right fingertips reach over on your exhale. Inhale, coming up towards center. Left hand towards right knee, right arm comes behind you, taking a seated spinal twist. Gaze looks off over your right shoulder. Exhaling, belly pulls back to spine. Every inhale, see if you can sit taller. Crown of your head reaches up towards the ceiling. And on every exhale, see if you can really twist at your core. Keeping your hips facing forward. Keeping the movement coming from the central region of the body rather than from your hips. Taking a deep inhale here. And a full exhale. Inhale, coming to the opposite side, right hand towards left knee. Left hand comes behind you, gaze looks out over your left shoulder. Again, seeing if you can send that energy in opposite directions, rooting down into your seat as the crown of your head reaches up. Gaze looks out over behind you. Taking a deep inhale here, and a full exhale. Bringing some movement, inhale coming into center, exhale twisting off to the right. Inhale back through center, exhale off to the left. Inhale. Exhale, twisting. Inhale. Exhale to the left. One more time. Inhale, off and to the right. Inhale, coming through center as you exhale to the left. Inhale, come back to center. You can remove your block if you're sitting on one and come into a tabletop position at the center of your mat. So knees directly underneath your hips, palms beneath your shoulders. Take root with your hands, really taking hold of the mat. Tops of your feet are rooted down. Lower belly is engaged to protect your back here. And begin to take some cat-cow. So bringing the movement from your pelvic region. Inhale, belly drops, gaze looks up into cow. Exhale, push into your hands, push into your knees, the tops of your hands as your belly rises, rounding of your back. Inhale, coming through cow. Belly drops, chest flows through your upper arms, gaze looks up. Exhale, pushing into your hands, your knees, your feet, as your belly pulls back to the spine. Inhale, one more time, belly drops, gaze looks up. Exhale, rounding of the upper back. Inhale, coming into a normal tabletop position. You're gonna bring your right foot up between your hands. So coming into a crescent lunge. So your lower knee, your back knee can stay rooted, top of your foot really planted down. You're welcome to keep your hands on either side of that right foot and just focus on your chest coming forward. Or you can bring your hands into a basket, placing it onto the top of your knee. Or lastly, the third option is to raise your hands above you. So bringing a long stretch into this left hip flexor. Your knee is staying directly over your right ankle as your hips move forward. Chest is rising, belly's engaged to protect that lower back, and pelvis is reaching down to the ground. Again, tap into that three-part breath into your belly, your ribs, and your chest. On your exhale, move those hips forward, right hip pulling back, left hip moving forward to keep them aligned. One more inhale here. Exhale, hands come out down to either side of that right foot, hips move back. Come up onto that heel of your right foot, moving into a hamstring stretch. So if you have blocks near you, you're welcome to use them on either side of that foot to help keep you lifted. Or just come onto the tops of your fingertips here. Hips moving back and up towards the back corner of the ceiling behind you. Chest is remaining broad, so not caving down. And just focusing on the movement of the chest moving forward as your hips move back. Take another inhale here. Exhale, plant into that right foot. Hands come to either side of the foot, and you're welcome to move back into tabletop, or if you'd like to move into plank, you can lift that back knee. Right foot moves back. And then bring your left foot up in between your two front hands. So again, bring that back foot, the back knee down if it was lifted. Really plant into the top of that right foot. And we'll come into crescent lunge on the left side. So again, options are hands on either side of that left foot, to the top of the left knee, or lifted above you. Really focus on the alignment of the hips. Right hip moving forward as left hip moves back. Chest is lifting up and forward. Staying broad across the chest. Gaze can reach, look up. And planting down into the top of that right foot and your hips moving forward. So feel that long stretch into that right hip flexor as you inhale. And exhaling here. One more inhale. Exhale, hands coming to either side of that left foot. Knee can come back into tabletop or into plank. And then slowly lift those hips coming into a downward facing dog. So just begin to move your knees right and left. Bring some movement into the downward dog. Hips are reaching up, planting firmly into both hands equally, and then coming to some stillness in the downward facing dog. Another option being child's pose, if that's too much weight or work into your wrists. And just connecting with your breath here. Taking a deep inhale and exhale. Inhale, reach that right leg up. And on the exhale, bring it forward. Plant your right foot up in between your two hands. The back heel plants down. The back foot is pointed up to about 10 or 11 o'clock, and you'll rise up into warrior one. So right toes are facing forward. The right knee is working towards coming directly over the right ankle and not going further beyond that. Your right hip is moving back as your left hip is moving forward. Your lower ribs are mid-in rather than protruding out. And arms are rising up. So palms together. Gaze is welcome to look up at the thumbs or directly in front of you. Take a deep inhale here. And exhale, coming out to warrior two. Back toes, your left toes come out to about 9 o'clock. Front toes remaining at 12 or the front of the mat. Arms directly out from your shoulders. Taking a deep inhale here. And exhale. Inhale, left hand comes down towards the thigh behind you. Right arm reaches up, reverse warrior. So keep the weight on the back leg and the front leg equal. And don't put weight into that back hand. You want the work to be in the legs. So you reach long with the right fingertips. Inhale. And exhale. Inhale, windmill your hands on either side of that right foot. Left heel reaches, right foot reaches back, coming into plank or to tabletop. Exhale, chaturanga. So shoulders move forward, elbows bend. Inhale, upward facing dog or cobra. And exhale, downward facing dog. Hips rise, rolling over your feet. Taking a deep inhale here, or again, you can find child's pose as well. Exhale. Another inhale. And exhale. Inhale, left leg reaches up. Exhale, knee towards chest. Left foot plants down in between the two hands. Right heel plants down behind you. Inhale, rising up to warrior one. So again, you're finding the front foot is facing 12 o'clock, knee directly over ankle. Your back foot, your right foot is about 1 or 2 o'clock. Right hip moving forward, left hip moving back, arms reaching up. Inhaling here, and exhale, settling into the pose. Another inhale, and exhale. Inhale, opening up into warrior two. So front foot at 12, back foot at 9 o'clock. Arms coming directly out from your shoulders, engaging those arms while relaxing your shoulders. So one opportunity here is for your palms to face up, helping you find that arm engagement and the releasing of the shoulders. And then keeping that engagement in the arms, flipping your palms back down to the mat. One more inhale here. And exhale. Inhale, right hand comes back towards your right thigh. Left hand reaches up and back, reverse warrior. So stay grounded into those legs, keeping that front knee bent and feeling a long stretch along the left side of the body. Taking a deep inhale here. Exhale, really engaging your inner thighs, pulling them together energetically. Taking a deep inhale. Exhale, hands windmill to both sides of that left front foot. Back knee can either drop down or stay lifted. Left foot comes back to plank or into tabletop. Exhale, bending at the elbows, lowering down, chaturanga. Inhale, upward facing dog or cobra. And exhale, hips rise and moving back. Downward facing dog or child's pose. Taking a deep inhale and exhale here, taking note of your breath. seeing if it's labored or feels easy and connected. Taking a deep inhale and a full exhale. Another inhale. Exhale, come forward into plank or tabletop. If you're in plank, bring both knees down, hips towards heels, arms extended out in front, child's pose. Taking a moment to catch your breath here. Release your shoulder right, your shoulder left. Maybe rocking your head from side to side to massage your forehead, top of your head. Taking a deep inhale and a full exhale. In your next inhale, begin to rise up, coming into a seated position. Hips can come off to the side. Legs come out in front of you. Feet plant down in front of you. Knees are bent. You can either extend your hands out in front of you or take hold of your thighs. We're going to move onto our back, but we want to engage our core and use our core here. So pull in that lower belly. Engage your core muscles. And again, arms out to the side or behind your knees, and slowly begin to come onto your back. So see how slowly you can move, keeping your lower belly engaged. Slowly coming down into your back. Feet plant down into the mat, knees are above the ankles. Hands come down onto the mat. And on your inhale, your hips will rise, moving into bridge pose. Really push down and root down into your heels, energetically pulling your heels back towards your shoulder blades to help keep you lifted. Hips are rising up towards the ceiling. Feel free to use your hands here to really push down into the mat to help keep you lifted. Feeling a stretch along both hip flexors, both the right and left side. Every inhale, see if you can lift your hips a little further. And on the exhale, focus on the energy of both your heels and your shoulders rooting down. Another inhale as your hips rise. And exhale, hips begin to come to the mat. Extend both legs out in front of you. Take an inhale. And exhale, draw your right knee in towards your chest. So bending your right knee, taking hold of either the front of your shin or the back of your thigh. Half Apanasana. So maybe you rock from right to left here, giving a little massage to your right hip flexor. And then on your next inhale, take your right knee and cross it over your body, coming into a supine twist. So right knee coming off to the left, your right arm can come off to the right, gaze looks out over your right shoulder. See if you can really let go of any work that you're trying to do here and allow gravity to help your body move further into this position, whatever it may look like for you and for your body today. Take a deep inhale and a full exhale. Another inhale and exhale. Inhale, bring that right knee back to center. And the exhale, give it one more squeeze into the body. Inhale, release the right leg forward. Exhale, bring the left knee towards the body. So again, taking hold of either the shin or the thigh. Both feet are engaged here. Taking a deep inhale, belly expanding, and on the exhale, pull that left thigh closer to the body. And you're welcome to rock right and left here, massaging your lower back and your left hip flexor. And on your next inhale, begin to bring that left knee over the body to the right side. Left arm reaches out to the left and gaze looks out over the left shoulder. Every inhale, fill the body with breath. Every exhale, release the tension, release the work in the musculature to just release into the body. Another inhale. And exhale. Inhale, coming back towards center. Exhale, pulling the knee back into the chest. Inhale, bring both knees up into the body, giving you a full Apanasana. You're welcome to stay in stillness or rock from side to side, again, massaging that lower back, releasing the tension in the hip flexors. Taking a deep inhale, and a full exhale. Your next inhale, extend both feet out in front of you. Arms come down to the side. And begin to find yourself in our final resting pose, Shavasana. So your right foot falls off to the right, left foot falls off to the left. Shoulder blades work their way underneath you, help expand across the chest. Fingertips relax. Toes relax. Your calf muscles relax. Allowing your thighs to roll off to the right and to the left. Releasing in the hips, in the core. Sensing the breath moving through the central part of the body, the ribs and the chest. Releasing any any tension in the shoulders, in your upper arms, your forearms, and again in your fingers. As you inhale, sensing the breath in your face and in your head. With exhale, releasing the jaw, the tongue, the cheeks, the eyes, and the forehead. Taking a deep inhale into the full body. With your exhale, the full body relaxes. Having a few minutes here in complete relaxation. Releasing the work. And resting in the energy of our practice. And as you rest in this stillness, begin to recognize the gifts of creation. Call them to mind. The people in your life, your own self and your own being. Witness God's presence in those gifts of creation. Giving them being. animating them. Consider how God is laboring within you at this very moment to bring about all of creation to the fullness of life. And as we close, begin to consider how you might be invited to respond in action with gratitude and with joy. Begin to bring some awareness to your breath. Seeing if you can extend both the inhale and the exhale. Begin to bring some movement into the body, wiggling the fingers and the toes, rolling the wrists and the ankles. Your arms extend behind you and above, your feet stretch forward, reaching right and reaching left. Take a deep inhale here. Exhale, bend your knees, pull them in towards your belly for one last time, giving yourself one final full body squeeze. And then slowly and as gracefully as you can, move to the right side of your body into the fetal position. Position of new life and birth, amidst challenge, pain, joy, and love. Taking a deep inhale here, and a full exhale. And then as slowly and as gracefully as you can, come into a seated position. So in whatever way you get there, find that seated space again. Sit bones rooting down, crown of your head reaching up, shoulders dropping, hands can come to heart center in prayer position. Taking a deep inhale here, feeling the energy and the life within, and exhaling. Another deep inhale together for 3, 2, 1, and exhale for 3, 2, 1. I'm grateful for this opportunity to practice. Grateful for the technology to allow us to do that together. Grateful for the life that we have and for the blessings amidst difficulty, pain, and suffering. Thank you for practicing. Namaste.
Thank you so much, Pat. As we all sort of gather back into our computer screens, I will be breaking you out into small groups, and we'd like to invite you to use this space to sort of share what Pat just invited us to reflect on during Shavasana. What have been the graces of this time, both in terms of the retreat and in terms of the pandemic, that you would like to savor and linger over? And then also, what are there any invitations for you? How are you invited to respond to these graces and to this moment?
the Bellarmine retreat in November that hopefully will be back in action, but we'll see, of course, God willing. In January, we have a retreat scheduled in Los Altos, California. In June, we switched our June 2020 retreat to June 2021. So those are on the schedule. And then some programs that are in the works that we're talking about are in June, we've been talking as a team about creating some focus groups. So some affinity groups, speaking with people of different age groups, people of color, people from different parts of the world, to listen, to learn how can we share Ignatian yoga in a way that reaches diverse people and people in different contexts. We are, based on your feedback that is forthcoming, so please share with us. We would like to do another online retreat. So actually for one of my projects for a school right now, I'm using Ignatian yoga as a retreat, creating one using the prophetic imagination of Walter Brueggemann. So we're going to be discerning about a theme of a retreat for another version of this. So we'd love feedback. And then possibly next spring, trying to get back to New York, which we had to cancel, or somewhere else on the East Coast. And then doing a yoga teacher training has been something we've been talking about for a while. And I think now with so much more being done online in Zoom, we're able to envision how that could happen. So for people who are already yoga teachers, this would be an ongoing education. So details coming with that, but all in the works. One other upcoming program that is happening this week. So, Frank Buckley, he reached out to me a couple weeks ago and he's got all kinds of big ideas, as I do, but so we ended up settling with, and Tom Weston is also here. Tom's been doing recovery retreats for 40 plus years around the world. So the three of us are going to be doing next Friday. Mainly it's going to be them. I'm going to teach a little bit of yoga, but mainly them speaking on recovery, addiction, which whether we're officially in a recovery program or not, all of us have different things that we are addicted or attached to, and so could benefit from wisdom from these guys especially. So if you're interested, that's on the website. It's just a one-off thing. Announcement though, let me stop share from Nicki.
Yeah, thank you, Bobby. So like Bobby said, this is our first virtual retreat and we would like to do more. We've gotten a lot of really great feedback, but we really need your evaluations and feedback. So I have created an evaluation form. I'm posting it in the chat right now. If you could take a few moments to fill that out, it will also come out in an email. But as we sign off today, perhaps you could click on that link now and open it up in your browser and just take a few minutes to do that before we end our time together. And I think that another grace of this time for us that we didn't name is that it's really sort of expanded our imagination about what IY can be and how we can connect with all of you as a broader community. So I've seen lots of, as I monitor the chat, there's been lots of ideas about podcasts and where we should go and all of those things. So that's one of the reasons why we want to have the focus groups. So please keep an eye out for when we announce that. So if you have ideas, feel free to jump into those focus groups. And then also, if you have those ideas, feel free to just put them in the eval under final comments and suggestions. So off to you, Bobby.
Okay, if you're starting with the evaluation, thank you for doing that. If you haven't yet, please, 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 we really, really appreciate and need your feedback. And so, but closing with a prayer. So this prayer actually came from kind of on the same lines of feedback. Somebody went home on one of the retreats that we did a couple of years ago in Cleveland and brought this prayer back for somebody in their small group. They read it and they've been ending most of the retreats that we do with this prayer. So I want to end with this, taking a couple deep breaths, coming back into the body. May the God of joy be with you, bringing delight at the very thought of your creation in God's plan. May you be thrilled by God's presence in your life, and may your heart overflow with gladness and song as you celebrate the nearness of such a lover. May song burst from your heart in grateful praise and ever surround you as you reach out to others in love. May the God of joy bless you. Amen. Thank you all so much. Thanks to the core team, for all of you for being part of this. Please be in touch, and we look forward to more of this. Stay safe, everybody, and wishing you much peace and well-being and consolation these days. Thanks for sharing the birthday. Happy birthday, Nicki. Let's go try to enjoy the rest of this day.